I'm Rob from RJ Fabrication. We haven't done a YouTube episode in quite a while, so we decided it's time to get back to it. I think we had like a 1.5 year hiatus, so it's just time. It's time to get back to it. We've had a lot of people inquiring about, hey, we haven't seen an episode in a while. You know, what do you got going on over there? We kind of want to see what you guys are building. So there's going to be some projects that you may recognize from previous episodes, and we have a whole bunch of new stuff. So let's get into it and check out what we got going on. We have two new off-road truck builds. This happens to be one of them right here. 83 crew cab for our client Mike. He wanted big horsepower, lots of wheel travel, be able to have 3 of his buddies with him, and 4-wheel drive. So let's go over this thing. We're excited about this one. So again, we're using Igor from Triton Engineering. We're using his front suspension bulkhead system. So we have heat-treated chrome ollie lower control arms, his billet 6061 upper arms. We're using King shocks. We're doing 2.5s and 4.0s on the front of this thing, all power steering solution. So one of the cool things that he upgraded, which I like a lot, is we actually have swing steering now instead of a rack and pinion. You get less feedback in the wheel, and I feel like personally it just has more leverage against the big tires. So it just steers way better with swing steer than it does with the rack and pinion. So we have Charlie from Power Steering Solutions billet box, his ram, and then all the billet steering swingers and pieces from Triton Engineering. So this thing should steer phenomenal. Should be really good. One of the other key features if you guys are familiar with the Willys that we built, same front end, but the other cool feature that we're excited about is we have portals on this. So we have 74 weld portals, 1:6:3 ratio, and so that's going to help with our CV angle drastically, and it also allows us to run like a 430 ring and pinion instead of running like a 589 or a 60 ring and pinion, where the pinion gears get so small that it gets weaker as it gets smaller. So just one of the cool upgrades. So that's pretty awesome. As far as the drivetrain and the power plant in this thing, let's go over that. We're pretty excited about it because we have GM's new ZZ632 crate engine, 1,000 horsepower, should be plenty of power to push this thing around. And again, maximum transmissions 4L80 with the billet reed case and all the billet internals and stuff. Atlas transfer case, got a 1:5 ratio transfer case in this thing. That should scoot it around pretty good. It's nice to have you know, the overdrive in these things, so you can drive around on the highway a little bit. And it'll be paddle shifted with twin sticks. We'll use the twin sticks to shift the transfer case, and then a turning brake. So should be pretty rad. So as far as the chassis goes, this thing is, you know, 2-inch chrome ollie 120 wall throughout. But one of the nice things that we like to do is we like to lace it out with bulkheads. So that's what all this chrome ollie plate is for. So instead of just running tubing inside, we use bulkheads. I feel like it's stronger. It's a lot more work, but aesthetically it looks super awesome as well. Our fuel cell is going to be mid-mount, so it's going to drop in from the bottom up, and that's what these 3 holes are for. That holds the fuel cell cradle in place. And then one of the really trick things about this truck is we actually have a bell crank system so that we have a cantilevered shock system on this. So we have a hybrid arm where we have a billet aluminum arm that's the link between the pivot point and the rear end itself. And then we have this chrome ollie arm, which is the link between the pivot point and the shocks. And then the upper part of the shocks, which is now the lower part of the shocks, mounts right here at the back of the chassis. And then, hey, if you want to come over here and look at this, Ryan, so where we have our rocker pivot right here, also we'll have a keyed piece right here. It's kind of like a drive flange. We call them drive flanges at the wheel. It's what the axle goes into. And then it captures the lug nuts, and that's what rotates the wheel and tire assembly. We're doing something similar, so I don't know if we can really call it a drive flange, but there's like a drive flange that keys into here, and then it's got splines broached on the inside, and now your sway bar pivots through the center of that. So your sway bar is actually connected to these arms directly instead of having it connected out here with another arm, with an additional arm. Another cool feature too is normally we put the bump stops kind of right where this arm is, down in this area where this larger heim joint is. So instead of doing that, we decided we'd simplify it. We have actually the bump pad mounted to the top of this arm. So as this comes up all the way, this arm actually just strikes your bump stop. So basically you're just striking the bump pad directly over the rear end like you normally would. It's just done through a link at the top of the arm. The rear end on this thing is from TubeWorks. Their tube works 4-inch, 250 wall chromoly housing. It's pretty much what we use. It's a standard for us in all our off-road truck builds. So super strong, very accurate as far as, you know, if we put a bar through it, it's perfectly straight. Their accuracy is really good. Their weld quality is good, and it's all heat treated before it's welded together. So it's a pretty nice feature. We're running 16-16 shocks. Normally we'll run a 16-18 shock up here on our trailing arm, but one of the benefits of having this is it puts static weight at the rear of the truck, and these things work considerably better with 60% weight at the rear. The other major benefit of it is, and the real reason why we actually did this, is because this being a 4-door truck, I wanted to have room in the rear for 2 passengers back here, 4 full-size adults in this thing. And so to do that, what we did was, if we're moving that stuff back there, now we don't have the shock, especially the coilover runs, kind of encroaches upon the passenger right here. So you have to move the seats closer together on the inside because it has captured the trailing arm in this area right here. So you'll see some of the luxury pre-renter trucks where it has a bunch of sheet metal, you know, packaged around that shock to close that area out. We didn't want that. We wanted just to have, you know, 4 full-size adults in this thing, have as much room inside the cab as possible. So another thing I wanted to mention is both the Blazer, which we'll show you later, and then this crew cab truck, these are the first 2 trucks that we decided to have drawn completely in CAD. We feel that it will be a head start for us so that we're not cutting tubes out and removing tubes if something's in the way. We get to build the whole truck in the computer, place passengers inside it, cycle suspension, move things around, and just make sure that we don't have any clearance issues. So a big thanks to Sean Kepler with Tangent Solutions, LLC, I believe is what his business is. Down for Glamis on Instagram is Sean. So if you're needing stuff drawn, you might want to hit him up, but he did a stellar job designing this thing for us and drawing it up for us. So we're just about ready to have this thing a roller. One of the last things that we're doing is we're actually designing this upper shock cross member. This is one of our first designs. We're going to change the motion ratio of the shocks a little bit, move them out so they're 90 degree at bump. I think they'll actually be 89 degrees at bump. So we may actually move this over a little bit just to make some room for that. Other than that, we're just about ready to have this thing a roller. As soon as this thing's a roller, we'll actually roll it outside. We'll use a forklift. We'll pull the cab off. All our cab mounts are done as far as the A pillar, B pillar, and C pillar mount. So we have our mount done here, here, and back here. That's what's holding the cab on now. The bottom part of the cab just gets welded in as far as how when we close the floor out, we just weld the actual rocker to the chassis itself. Another thing that we're actually designing right now is we have roof tubes and seat mounts going in. So I need to get with Dallas on the roof tubes, and I need to get with Aiden on the seat mount. So let's go see what Aiden's designing on the computer for the seat mount.
The crew cab, we needed new seat bases. So I don't know if you like these ones or if you want to change it to the style of it.
Yeah, can you click back to what we had before? Okay, so you just shrunk it up so it fits under the seat better.
Yeah.
And everything's symmetrical, looks, yeah.
Yep.
Oh, so is this the current one right now?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I like it. It's bitching. All right, Dallas, so I'm gonna need you to get the roof tubes in this thing. So I think what we're gonna do is, obviously we have our center ones, so we'll have from here to here. Same thing with this, but let's put a little kick in that one right here at the end.
You want the bends the same distance away from as those?
Yeah, let's keep it really tight so it's diving up immediately. So we're not having that long gradual, you know what I mean?
Okay.
Plus, I think it'll be easier when we build the panels to close out the headliner.
Yeah.
So, and as soon as you get all these tacked in, then we can lift the cab off for the last time. We'll weld that stuff up.
Yep.
We'll do all, you know, we'll have all our radius gussets tacked in. We'll weld all that up.
Yep.
And then, since that'll be the last time the cab will be off, we'll build the headliner
While it's off.
while it's off because it's way easier. Then we'll get the, yep.
Yep. So, okay.
Because we'll have the tube sticking half out like we did on the
Yeah.
on the Willys. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, right on.
Okay. Most of the people that have followed my previous YouTube stuff that we've done are familiar with the Datsun 510. So we actually have made some progress on this. It's nights and weekends for me and being my personal project. So it doesn't move along as fast as we want it to, but it's coming along really well. We have all the brake package on, the chassis is completely welded out since the last time anybody had seen it. Seat mounts are done, column mounts done, pedals are in, and I think most of that was done previously, but what we really got a lot done and accomplished is the rear suspension. So all the rear suspension's wrapped up. I'm actually cutting bolt length. So I like to shoulder the bolt the whole way on the load itself, you know, in between the two tabs. So we get our bolts a little bit long and then we cut them down, we face them off on the lathe. So I just have some more of those to do, and then we're actually able to tighten this thing down. I'll get the springs on the shocks. You may not have seen this in the previous episode. So Ryan, if you could capture this thing's a double rocker assembly. So it actually, this push rod, which is where the strut normally would be, pushes on this rocker pushes on this rocker pushes on this shock. So everything's 1-to-1 ratio. So if you had a strut out here, and let's just say for a race application, you wanted a 250-pound spring, everything's 1-to-1. So you still would run the same shock valving and spring rate that you would if it was just a strut or a shock out here, you know, on the outside part of the car itself. So being a 1-to-1 ratio, it keeps everything simple. But we also made these rockers unbolt off the pivot. So if you wanted to change the ratio around, you actually could. So you can go like a 1.8 or a 1.7 if you wanted to. You could get a little more travel that way too with the same stroke shock. Not that we need it for this car, but just kind of the cool thing about how math comes into play with, you know, building cars and doing suspension. So it's kind of neat. But fuel cell's also done. We just don't have it in the car right now. It needs to be welded up. When I say done, I mean it's cut and it's bent and it's ready to weld up. We have the complete fuel system for this thing as well. I'll make sure I have it in the car for the next episode, but the transmission, we just got it back from ZF Design in Colorado. They put a complete X-shift kit inside the transmission, so now it's sequentially shifted, and we'll use a carbon fiber shifter handle with a strain gauge, and so we'll be able to shift it without the clutch, no lift shifting, up or down shifting. So that's gonna be super fun. Should make this thing fun to drive. And then if you're not familiar with it, the drivetrain is Subaru, so it is all-wheel drive, Subaru drivetrain. I think it's called Powered by RPM in Huntington Beach. He's the one that built the engine for me, and he assures me 620 to 640 horsepower to the wheels. And we were shooting for 2,000 pounds, but we've already been weighing stuff as we go. It looks like we'll probably be about 2,200 pounds when it's all said and done, full of fuel, ready to go, which is still a pretty good power to weight ratio. So this thing should be really fun to drive around on the street. It should be hard not to get in trouble in it. So we'll see what happens. Another piece of the puzzle was the body. So since we had the body off to weld the chassis, I decided to go ahead and get the body sandblasted. We'll actually weld out some of the mounts that we need to mount it to the chassis itself, and then we'll kick this thing off and get it etch primed. So I have it up in the nice shop just to keep, you know, the rust at bay and just keep the moisture at bay on this thing. It's summertime, so our moisture is pretty low up here in the desert. We're pretty dry. So as soon as we get a little bit of extra time, the body's pretty much ready to go back on the 510. We'll do the mounts. We already have the rocker mounts done, but we'll do all the A pillar, B pillar mounts. And yeah, we'll send this thing off. And the cool thing about the 510, one of the neat things about the 510 is actually being designed to drive with the body off. So we can do testing, we can do a bunch of things with the body off and then put the body on at any time. So, but we'll get this thing primered. I think we're gonna go ahead and wrap it. I know we gotta do our fender flares on it first, so we'll weld the fender flares up and get all that stuff handled, and then this thing will be ready to wrap. Another one of the newer projects that we have in here that I'm sure nobody's seen yet is this 1956 Chevy. This was brought to us by actually the gentleman that built my shop in my house years ago. And just had a stock 350 in it and a 700 R4 transmission. It was a nice clean driver. So we're not doing paint, we're not doing upholstery, it's kind of refreshing. So we're just doing the meat and potatoes on this thing. We decided to upgrade the driveline. So we have 427 cubic inch LS3 from Maruzzi Race Engines, and we have the Magnuson supercharger off of a Corvette kit, like a 2016 Corvette. We have a maximum transmission 4L80 in this thing, not the billet SFI case, but all billet internals just for the handle of the horsepower. Willwood brakes all the way around, so we have 14-inch 6 pistons in the front and 14-inch 4 pistons in the rear with a parking brake. We have Budnick wheels. We have a 18 by 8 in the front and a 19 by 12 in the rear. So we have a 345/30/19 tire on the back of this thing. We did a mini tub, and we're replumbing the car, and we're getting ready to do wiring. What the guys are working on right now is we had to move the core support forward to make room for the radiator, the AC condenser, and the intercooler. And then we'll put the transmission coolers down below, kind of underneath, and we'll direct air into that. So starting to get a little bit crowded up here. These cars are pretty decent size engine compartment, but it's amazing how fast it fills up and things start getting crowded. So you really got to plan. This is one of the first vehicles that we just decided to try the Concept 1 front drive system on it. We've used Vintage Air, we've used Eddie Motorsports, so we wanted to try something a little bit different with the supercharger. One thing I like about the Concept 1 is the supercharger assembly is on its own drive system, its own drive belt, and then it has an auxiliary belt that runs the alternator, the AC compressor, and the water pump and the power steering pump. So separating those two things, I think that's going to help us out. Previously, we were getting some slippage a little bit on the drive belt for the supercharger. So I think now that we have a dedicated belt just for a supercharger, we're going to test that, but I think it's going to work out pretty well. 7 hours later. Okay, so underneath this thing, as far as front suspension, we have a Ride Tech A-arm kit on this with coilover shocks. We didn't want to do the air ride on it. We just wanted a nice, performance driving coilover suspended vehicle. So that's why we decided not to go with airbags. Came with rack and pinion steering, so that's kind of nice. Power rack, that's going to help it steer and just make it more of a pleasure to drive. Sometimes we build headers, but they had a nice header for this already from Hooker. So we got some Hooker 1 7/8 long tube headers on this thing. We added some O2 bungs. We had to make a custom transmission cross member, and then we have our exhaust system go through the cross member just so it's not hanging low. We got some 3-chamber Flowmasters on this thing. Moving to the back, we have Ride Tech 4-link suspension system as well. One of the reasons we decided to do that was, we've engineered some of our own 4-links. We've used Detroit Speed and Engineering, but Ride Tech had a kit that bolted in this thing. And so we were trying to draw the line where we're not getting to the point where a lot of times we do the full builds, we'll pull the body off, we'll sandblast the frame, and we'll just, sometimes we'll remake the back section of the frame. We didn't want to do that on this project. The whole point of this project was to make a nice driver and not get into, building a car that costs $300,000+. So we're just trying to keep the cost a little bit lower and just have a fun driver of a car. So no upholstery, no paint, stuff like that. Whoever built this car previously already powder coated the chassis, so that's nice. So that's what helped our decision in, doing some bolt-on 4-link kit instead of doing a bunch of fab work and making something overly trick that still ultimately does the same job. We will have to, modify for, I think it was designed for the factory 12 bolt. And so this pinion location of a Ford 9-inch is a little bit lower. So it comes in contact with the track bar. So we'll offset the track bar a little bit, and I think it's gonna clear because it's barely touching. But the exhaust system we designed goes completely, all stainless 3-inch, completely goes all the way to the very back of the car. Coilover suspension in the rear again, fabricated 9-inch housing. We just welded strange, housing ends on it to the desired width to fit the 345/30/19 tires. Should work pretty good. Should be a super fun driver, lots of horsepower, and plenty of burnouts. So I think Chuck's gonna have a super good time with this thing. Okay, so the other off-road truck, the 2 off-road trucks that we're building right now, the other off-road truck is this 1989 Blazer. Looks nothing like a 1989 Blazer right now. But anyways, we decided to do, the client wanted TTBs in the front, which are twin traction beams. So we're doing 4-wheel drive on this project as well. So we had Jason Hurd from Tech Consulting design this H-frame assembly for us that works in conjunction with Ocho Fab's TTBs. The reason we're using Ocho Fab TTBs is they're the best ones in the industry. Can we design and engineer it ourselves? Yeah, but it's just a huge jump start if we're using somebody else's proven working component. So yeah, Ocho's on top of it, man. His stuff's super nice. So the H-frame's done and completely welded out. We kept this cradle in here, this fixture that fixtures all those mounting points for the TTBs and the steering. That's here just to hold the chassis in place, so that as we start building the cage and everything, we know that stuff's not moving around. These mounts right here are for the radius arms for the front. And then these are our link boxes for the rear. So you have your upper link and then you have your lower trailing arm link. Like the crew cab truck that we're building, again, we want 4 full-size adults in this thing. So one thing that's not pictured here, we have a very large heat-treated wishbone assembly that locates the rear end laterally in the vehicle. So that wishbone kind of goes around both back passengers and the seats kind of sit down in that area. So it's scissoring past you, which is kind of a weird, trippy thing. But this is going to use what we call mezzanine, or for short, we call it mezzi arm suspension, where we have the rear end placed probably in this area right here. We have a link and an arm, and then your shocks are placed on that arm and go rearwards towards the rear camper shell area of the Blazer itself. So some of the old Baldwin race trucks were like that, and I always just thought it was a super cool design. Another off-road truck that we're super excited to build. So can't wait to show you guys more. So 71 Pantera, this is in a lot of our older YouTube episodes, and we have gotten quite a bit done on it actually. So you may or may not have seen the exhaust system being run on my Instagram. I think we might have a clip of it in one of the older YouTube episodes, but we're getting ready to put the engine and transmission back in as soon as we get the roll cage welded up. But one of the things we had been working on is suspension and brakes. So the front suspension is done now. So we have the Alden Eagle coilover shocks front and rear. But we designed our own upper and lower chromoly arms in the front of this thing. One of the reasons why is we also, since the last episodes, we've gotten our wheels. So these are Work M1 Meisters. They're made in Japan. Took us a while to get them. Took us about 6 months to get them. But I wanted to move the offset positive on the front wheel. The cars handle better that way. The other thing that we wanted to do is make a longer control arm to compensate for that. And then also we lowered the upper mounting point so we can get some camber gain in it. So this wheel isn't actually adjusted properly right now. We have adjustment on the arm. So we're going to move this wheel out about probably 500 thou or half an inch. And it gets it really close to the end of the fender lip. But as it cycles up, it tucks in. And so it doesn't touch the fender flare lip itself. So we got that completed. Then the other thing, we've been working with Mike Hamrick at Willwood, and I found some 13-inch rotor, big brake kits for the Panteras, but I couldn't find a 14-inch rotor one. So now we have 14-inch rotors, 6-piston calipers, Willwood's new caliper. I can't remember the name of it, but it's super, got a really cool bridge on the outside of it. It's a really nice looking caliper. And then we just designed our own mounting brackets for that. So they actually mount to the factory upright. So we may end up offering that as a kit later on, so that you can use those Willwood components in our bracketry to put 14-inch rotors and 6-piston calipers on all 4 corners on these Panteras. So big, massive upgrade for braking. Oh, another thing that we had gotten on is the electronic power steering. So that's kind of an adapter piece that goes in the column area. SAC Racing sells that piece. So we got that on. It did change the angle of the steering wheel a little bit. So we're fabricating a wedge just to bring the steering wheel back down. It doesn't have a tilt column in these cars. So it just felt kind of funky, the position that it put the steering wheel in. The other things that we have completed, if you want to come back to the back of the car, Ryan, is we don't have the pumps and the vents on them, but Panteras come with a large fuel cell on the driver's side. So if you're driving by yourself, you have all your fuel and the weight of yourself on the driver's side of the car. So it kind of makes it ill as far as weight distribution. So we decided we'd do a little bit smaller tanks, 2 of them mirrored, side to side. And that way you just have one fill point. It fills both and lowers both at the same time, but now the weight stays balanced from side to side as far as fuel goes. We need to fabricate the scoops in the hood. We're gonna do GT40 style scoops. We lay the radiator forward a little bit more. That way we can get a full-size condenser on the front. And now you have the air capturing from the front, passing through the radiator, and then just exits out the hood. They had 2 small vents in the hood from the factory. I don't know if that was enough air for the air to escape or if it was packing under the hood, but I do know that some of these Panteras had overheating issues, and I feel like that's probably one of the problems is, the air packed up in the hood and it couldn't get that hot air to escape fast enough. So, and then the exhaust system exits out the center here where the factory AC condenser was. So we'll actually French that in and build a piece that, so that looks like it belonged there. It was supposed to go there. And if you haven't followed in the previous episodes, we do have some cutouts in the back of this thing where the factory mufflers are. I think what we'll do is we'll actually extend those open a little bit, and then we'll probably do some sort of subtle, not very obtrusive looking diffuser right there. So I don't want a big ugly diffuser on the back of this car, but maybe something just to help the air exit off the back of the car. So that's what we got going on with the 71 Pantera. One of the other off-road trucks I have is just a simple front suspension setup that sometimes when I say simple, they don't always work out to be that simple. But this gentleman here, he's been waiting quite a while to get in with us, and he drove his truck all the way from Tennessee. And if you don't know, we're out here in California, so that's a bit of a drive. But Porter Race Cars, he had actually had upper and lower A-arms designed by Porter Race Cars, so he wanted to mid-travel the front of his truck and do a coilover, but also maintain his four-wheel drive. So we ended up bolting that stuff on. Turns out all the work was incredibly nice from Porter, but the upper A-arm didn't quite clear the shock package that he has for this thing. So instead of buying different shocks that he's owned for quite a while, we decided just to redesign the upper arm. And then while we were redesigning the upper arm, we decided, well, let's take it a little step further and let's do a slapper bump on this thing. So a slapper bump actually has a bump stop that has kind of like an A-arm that goes out and holds that bump stop in place. And so as the upper A-arm comes, it actually strikes that bump stop pad and then pushes the bump stop in, but the bump stop can't move in and out because it actually has an A-arm attached to it. So kind of a early stages trophy truck design from back in the 80s and 90s. I do see a few trucks actually running it today, but not a lot. Anyways, it's kind of a cool feature that we added to this thing. So plated the frame, got all the suspension done, and now we're just waiting for axles. And as soon as we get the axles, we'll cycle it, make sure we don't have any CV bind, and then we'll determine where we're gonna put the limit straps. Once that's installed, we'll paint up the frame and powder coat our parts or nickel plate our parts, and then this thing's down the road. So that's pretty much what we have going on this 2000 GMC simple front suspension project that turned into a little bit more, but that's how it goes sometimes. So this car is actually the first Pro Street car I ever did. So I don't know if if you didn't capture the first episode that we had this car in, just a quick explanation. First Pro Street car I've ever built, first roll cage in my own personal cars that I've done before, first car I ever tubbed out. So I've had this car for a long time, bought it in 1992 or 3 and started Pro Streeting it at the end of 93. So it was actually a super clean, nice Camaro, a nice driver that I just decided to cut up because I didn't have another car to turn into a race car. So I think we have about 260 more rear wheel horsepower, which is super awesome. And we actually put it on a small tire. So we're gonna go do some testing and see if we can get traction on a small tire. That's ultimately just the major changes. We just found a bunch more horsepower. So we're making approximately 970 to the wheels, which is pretty good. I know that, there's some cars out there that make considerably more that I'll be competing against, but the street is the great equalizer of horsepower. So sometimes traction is what wins. So we'll see what happens there if we can get this thing to work properly and get traction. So nothing special on the engine, realistically. It's kind of, old school stuff. It got some AFR 227 heads on it. Jeff Ginter Racing Engines went through and freshened everything up for me. We changed to gas ported pistons, shaft mount rockers, T&D shaft mount rockers, and everything is bronze bush throughout, no needle bearings in it. So ultimately, that's pretty much the major changes. I'm running the same amount of nitrous I was running before, and we found about, like I said, 260 more rear wheel horsepower. So it's actually surprising that we got that much more power out of it, but you can't argue with the results. So that's where we are with this thing. So one of the newer projects that we have is this 68 Bronco. It was brought to us as a roller with just the suspension loosely bolted in, the engine and transmission just sitting in its mounts, but that's pretty much it. So we've had to put this thing together pretty much from scratch. It's got a fresh paint job. It came with a 351 Windsor engine and an AOD transmission. So some of the things that we've done to this thing is add air conditioning, just get this thing pretty much ready to run. So all the plumbing, all the AC stuff, all the front drive system that we did, headers, exhaust system, brake system, pretty much everything when you're starting scratch from, putting a vehicle together that's just a bare body and an engine and transmission sitting in it. So, we're not making a full show car. This is going to be a driver, but some of the nice things that we did is, we just made this little standoff right here just to hold the hoses nice and clean and just try to do a super, sanitary job of wiring and keeping this thing looking nice. So Ryan, we went ahead and added all the AC ducting inside, a tilt column, a classic instruments gauge, and we haven't put the stereo in yet, but we'll put a radio, but nice new seats, seat belts. Everything's pretty much brand new on this thing. So should be a nice, fun, clean driver. And we still got glass windows to do, weather stripping, a few things like that. But let's look underneath this thing. It's not too bad looking underneath as well. Underneath this thing, just the necessities, everything's kind of cleaned up. There was a hole that the body shop missed right here, so we welded up that hole, and we're gonna undercoat with bed liner these areas and some of the areas that got missed as far as paint goes. But nice stainless steel exhaust system, a brand new 9-inch from Tom's Off-Road. Our driveline guy made drive shafts for it. We went with a little bit larger Flowmasters on here, some 3 chambers. We want it, you know, throaty sounding, but not too terribly loud. 456 gears in it, and disc brakes all the way around. You got James Duff radius arms right here, so that's kind of a cool addition. Plus, we have the adjustable brackets here, so you can give this thing a little more caster. Initially, it came to us without those brackets, had the factory ones on. We added those because this thing actually had -2 degrees of caster, so that it would have been a horrible driver. So now it has 3.5 degrees of caster, so should track nice and straight and drive pretty good as far as Broncos drive, which, you know, they're a little bit of a handful anyways with the big long pan hard rod on it, but should be good to go. We're just about wrapped up with this thing and ready to kick it off. If you've seen any of our past episodes, a couple of the cars that we don't have here right now that we're still building is the 1956 Chevy Gasser. So that's in wiring right now at Jack's Motorsports. After wiring, we're ready to dyno and rip on that thing. So that's pretty cool. So we're just about wrapped up on that. And then we have the 55 Chevy Big Block Pro Touring car. That's in upholstery right now. So as soon as it's done in upholstery, it'll go to wiring. We kind of usually do that the other way around. Usually we wire first and then do upholstery. But the upholstery guy had an opening, wire guy had an opening. That's just kind of how it worked out. So, but yeah, so hopefully we'll have those here and be able to show you those on the next episode. As always, man, like and subscribe. And if you want to ask me any questions, I love answering people's questions. And if you give me a hard time, I'll probably make fun of your mom. It's all in good fun, but that's just how I roll.